She strutted across the parking lot like she owned every inch of asphalt, clutching a shiny master key she claimed opened every car in the neighborhood. The morning was quiet, the sunlight sharp, the air heavy with the kind of arrogance only someone utterly convinced of her authority could carry. She marched straight toward my black SUV, the one she had complained about for months, jabbing her key into the lock with the confidence of a self-appointed guardian of the HOA. But then came the moment she didn't expect. The key jammed. The lock stayed dead silent. And her face twisted from certainty to confusion to fury. Instead of stopping, she doubled down, tugging, prying, scratching at the door as if the vehicle owed her obedience. When the car refused to bow to her imaginary power, she stepped back, pulled out her phone, and did the unthinkable. She called 911, claiming my car was suspicious, illegal, and refusing to open to her authority. The officers she expected to back her? They didn't know she had just summoned the one person she never should have challenged. Because the SUV she tried to break into didn't belong to a random neighbor. It belonged to the county sheriff. To me. Her day was about to change in a way she could never control. And the parking lot where she always held power was about to become the place where she finally lost it. Hit subscribe. Watch till the end. The neighborhood had always worn a strange calm, the kind that looked peaceful from a distance but carried tension beneath the surface. Perfect lawns, polished mailboxes, trimmed hedges, everything shaped to match a standard someone like Karen believed she was born to enforce. I had watched it long enough to recognize the pattern. The way she hovered near windows, the way her eyes followed every unfamiliar vehicle, the way she treated the HOA rulebook like scripture. My black SUV became her newest obsession the moment it appeared in my driveway. To her, it wasn't a vehicle, it was a threat to the illusion of control she clung to. She circled it every morning like a guard dog, glaring at the windows, inspecting the tires, searching for a flaw she could inflate into a violation. She didn't know who owned it. She didn't recognize it as a county-issued sheriff's vehicle. To her, it was just another thing she hadn't approved. I had been quiet about my position, not because I needed secrecy, but because in neighborhoods like this, titles distort behavior. People reveal their truest selves when they think no authority is watching. And Karen, every gesture, every complaint, every attempt to dictate, revealed more about herself with each passing week. The HOA board had tried to rein her in once. She responded by declaring herself the unofficial security coordinator, a title she repeated often, as if repeating it made it real. She carried a silver key she claimed could open every car within the HOA boundary. Neighbors rolled their eyes, but no one challenged her. Most simply avoided confrontation, choosing silence over conflict. My job required me to be patient, observant, controlled. Off-duty didn't change that, so I watched. I listened. Not as an officer, but as a resident who understood the difference between authority and obsession. And slowly, I noticed her behavior shifting. She started scanning license plates, logging who visited which house, memorizing schedules that didn't concern her. The tension grew like an unseen storm. And the SUV placed directly in her line of sight became the lightning rod. Every morning she paused longer beside it. Every afternoon she circled it with growing suspicion. Every evening she stared at it from across the street as if daring it to reveal something. She wanted control, absolute, unquestioned control. The kind she believed she was entitled to. And that entitlement simmered until the morning she decided her imaginary authority gave her the right to touch something she didn't own. The master key gleamed in her hand as she approached the SUV, convinced the world would bend to her will as it always had. But the world she was stepping into wasn't hers. It was mine. And the moment she jammed that key into the lock, her illusion of control began to crack, piece by piece, under the weight of reality she never saw coming. The parking lot fell into a strange, suspended silence after she made the call, an uneasy stillness that seemed to tighten around every parked vehicle. Karen paced in tight circles, clutching her phone like a badge she believed gave her absolute control. Her shoulders were stiff, movements sharp, fueled by the confidence that the system she so often weaponized would rise in her defense once again. What she didn't know was how quickly that illusion would unravel. The 911 dispatch pinged my phone long before any patrol cars even began to roll. I stood in my office, the morning sun cutting through the blinds, illuminating the polished badge on my desk. The report was short, confused, and telling. A woman claims her master key won't open a vehicle she believes is illegal and wants the owner arrested. A familiar description followed. Her name, her voice, her pattern. The kind of call that wasn't rooted in safety, but in entitlement. The kind that chipped away at trust, wasting resources, draining attention from real emergencies. And the vehicle she targeted? County-issued, logged, authorized, and unmistakably marked in the system, but only to those who knew what they were looking at. I took my time walking to the lot. Not out of spite, but out of clarity. Some lessons had to unfold at their own pace. And as I approached, the tension in the air shifted. Neighbors peeked from blinds. A dog stopped mid-bark. Even the breeze seemed to hesitate. Karen didn't notice me. Her entire world was narrowed to the SUV she couldn't conquer. Each failed attempt chipped away at her certainty. The scratches around the lock, the bent edge of her master key, the rising frustration in her posture, they all told the story before she could speak it. Her friends hovered at a distance, unsure whether to support her or pretend they didn't know her. Some filmed quietly, sensing something bigger brewing. They had seen her push boundaries before, but never like this. Never this bold, this reckless, this unjustified. The patrol car arrived. Slow, cautious, lights off. 2 officers stepped out, assessing the scene with trained eyes. The moment they noticed me walking toward them, their posture shifted, recognition replacing uncertainty. But Karen remained oblivious, too committed to her narrative to see the tide turning. She waved aggressively at the officers, pointing at the SUV with fury fueled by embarrassment. Her voice rang across the lot, sharp and frantic, built entirely on her belief that authority existed to reinforce her worldview. But authority wasn't built for that. And she was about to face the truth of it. Each step I took closed the distance between us, tightening the atmosphere. Her confidence began to falter as the officer's attention drifted from her, to me, to the badge at my side. The balance of power shifted in an instant. And her world, constructed entirely on imagined control, began to tilt. The moment I stepped fully into the open, the entire parking lot seemed to hold its breath. The morning sun caught the metal of my badge, a brief flicker of authority cutting through the last moments of Karen's imagined power. Her rant slowed not because she recognized me, but because something in the atmosphere shifted, a tension too heavy to ignore. The 2 responding officers straightened subtly, their stance changing from uncertain inquiry to outward respect. They didn't need words to acknowledge my presence. Their silence alone redrew the borders of the moment. Karen noticed their change in posture, but she misinterpreted it as support, another sign that she believed the world bent to her will. She pointed at the SUV again, her voice rising with theatrical urgency, convinced she had caught a criminal in the act of existing. She lifted her worn master key, shaking it with the absolute faith that everyone around her would accept her version of reality. Her confidence didn't just crack, it swelled, fueled by the belief that the officer's attention on me meant validation. But the officers weren't seeing what she thought they were seeing. They were seeing the owner, the sheriff, their superior. I walked closer, each step deliberate, grounding the moment in an inevitability she could no longer escape. Her certainty faltered for the first time when the officers moved out of her orbit and closer into mine, instinctively orienting themselves to proper hierarchy. A quiet ripple of realization touched her expression, faint but unmistakable. Something was wrong, but she didn't yet understand what. The parking lot grew stiller. Neighbors lurked behind curtains, silhouettes framed by blinds, watching a story unfold they had long expected but never seen delivered. They had witnessed her patrols, her accusations, her attempts to seize control of anything she didn't understand. Yet this time, the consequences had drawn themselves into a single point, compressing every action she'd taken into one impending moment. She tried to regain footing, stepping back toward the SUV as if proximity would re-establish her authority. The scratches she had left around the lock glinted in the sun, evidence of an attempt to breach what didn't belong to her. Evidence that wouldn't fade. Evidence she couldn't explain away. The officers' faces hardened as they surveyed the damage. They didn't look at her with anger or frustration. They looked at her with the quiet recognition reserved for people who had just crossed a line they thought was invisible. Her breathing changed, shallower, faster, as the foundation she relied on shifted beneath her. She sensed the moment unraveling but couldn't yet anchor herself to reality. She clung to her master key, like a lifeline, gripping it tighter as if squeezing it would prove her right. But the truth stood in front of her. And it carried a badge. I reached the SUV and paused beside the door she had damaged. The marks on the paint, the scraped edges of the metal, each told a longer story than any words she could offer. The officers stepped beside me, acknowledging my silent assessment, the weight of the situation settling fully into place. Only then did Karen understand. Her eyes widened, her posture stiffened, and her breath caught sharply in the space between denial and comprehension. She wasn't the victim. She wasn't the authority. She wasn't the one summoning help. She was the suspect. The officers approached her slowly, not aggressively, but with the controlled professionalism reserved for someone in deep violation. She backed away, stumbling into the curb as her world collapsed in real time. The master key slipped from her hand, hitting the pavement with a metallic clatter that echoed across the lot like a final verdict. The truth washed over her in a silent wave. The car she tried to open. The call she made. The accusations she flung. Every piece connected. Every assumption shattered. She stared at me, not with anger, but with something closer to fear, the kind born from suddenly seeing reality stripped of the illusions that once protected her. Her voice faltered. Her posture shrank. Her certainty dissolved. And the parking lot, the stage she had dominated for years with imagined authority, now bore witness to the moment that authority dissolved into nothing. The responding officers didn't have to raise their voices. They simply stood by, letting the weight of the situation settle fully onto her shoulders. The truth didn't need theatrics. It sat in the silence between us, unshakable and final. Her downfall wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. It wasn't dramatic in the way she had once scripted her life. It was quiet, inevitable, complete. The parking lot slowly breathed again as the moment settled. The sun rose higher, warming the pavement where her dropped master key still lay, dull, useless, exposed for what it truly was. Karen stood motionless, her certainty stripped away, replaced by a hollow stillness that came only when a person finally saw the truth they had been running from. The officers didn't lecture her. They didn't need to. Their calm stance, their quiet professionalism, and their unwavering attention toward me spoke louder than any reprimand. The message was clear. Her authority existed only in her imagination, and she had mistaken obsession for power. Neighbors began to drift away from their windows, the spectacle ending, the illusion of her control dissolving across the community like a fading shadow. The parking lot, once her self-declared domain, no longer belonged to her. It had never belonged to her. She simply had never been confronted with the reality that she held no control over others, only over her own choices, and even those had led her here. I picked up the damaged key from the pavement, its edges bent from the force she had used. A small object, yet it carried the weight of every boundary she had violated. Without a word, I set it gently on the hood of the SUV she had tried to claim authority over, a silent reminder of where her assumptions had brought her. As the officers guided her away, her steps were slow, almost fragile. The parking lot echoed not with punishment, but with consequence. And in that quiet moment, one truth settled over everything. Control isn't taken. It's earned. Respect isn't demanded. It's deserved. And some lessons arrive only when the world stops letting you pretend.